Graham, what were the numbers that stood out to you in this budget?
There was a bit more excitement this time. I use the word carefully. It's never really exciting to cover a budget. A lot of work, as Dan said. But there's a sense from the NDP, they were excited about this. This is the first time they've been in government. We knew it was going to come in terms of the spending roughly in a deficit, but they were really excited about this. And that did translate into a sense. Things have changed. There's a shift in Alberta politics. But we're going through this a lot of information, and it wasn't until we got to the technical briefing we got a chance to go into some more detail when we realized they're not only borrowing to build schools and hospitals, they're borrowing to pay the wages. And that was, I think, the biggest number that struck me, is that as of next year, they're going to start to borrow money for operating, not just capital.
The sunny day savings are gone.
Yeah, the sustainability fund, the contingency account, it keeps changing names, is now going to be drawn down. It was $6.5 billion to be drawn down to nothing by the end of next year, and they'll be starting to borrow money. $700 million next year, $3.3 billion the year after. That's $4 billion. That's not for capital. That's just to pay wages, keep the lights going on. And that, to me, was the biggest number that struck me, because we haven't done that in Alberta in more than 20 years. Since the Getty did it, Klein did it for a year, and then he ratcheted it back, began cutting, and they have not borrowed money to keep the lights on in 20, 25 years. So that was a big shift in the numbers and also in the philosophy of this government.
And it's the borrowing for expenses as opposed to capital. And whereas I hesitate to be the simple-minded person who makes the analogy to your home financing, this is an analogy to your home financing. It's different to take out a mortgage to do an upgrade to your house. It's different to take out a mortgage to build an addition in your backyard than it is to buy your groceries on your credit card. It just is. And so I think that is going to be the optical thing that's going to be a little trickier for the NDP to sell.
You will find quite a number of economists, I think, that support the idea that they shouldn't get right back to a balanced budget right now, because it is impossible. With oil where it is impossible in this province. But it's the 4, 5, 6 year horizon that they talk about, and that's fine. If you can plan your way out of this over 4, 5, 6 years, I think economists will support that. But at the end of 4 years in this budget, the debt's going to be $36.6 billion. Yeah. I don't think there's too many economists who can wrap their heads around that and see that as a fine exit strategy.
It is okay to borrow money to build hospitals, because the illusion that Ralph Klein eliminated the debt in this province, I mean, it's a lie. He eliminated the paper debt, right, but he did that by putting us into a deep infrastructure debt that we're still paying off. So there is a really good financial argument at a time when the economy is soft, when borrowing costs are at all-time record lows, and when we actually have construction workers available to be spending money now on major infrastructure. Yeah. That is different than spending money on salaries.
Yeah. Dwayne Bratt, political scientist in Calgary, said there are 3 choices governments face in Alberta. 1 is draconian spending cuts, Ralph Klein. 2 is provincial sales tax. And 3 is hope for oil prices to go up. And he says everybody but Klein has picked number 3. So is that what we're stuck with in Alberta, based on the commodity, the oil commodity being something that fluctuates? Are we stuck with that?
It's ironic, isn't it? The NDP has been complaining about the government spending and their finances for years. Is caught in the same bind because they're inheriting the same mess, the same principles. Because even though the NDP brought down a budget this week, it was really based on the old PC budget. We won't actually see a real NDP budget till next year, when we start seeing things like what they're going to do with the royalty rates, what they're going to do with the climate change strategy, which may impact in terms of carbon tax. So yeah, they are hoping for oil to bounce back one day. They're borrowing money, which is another way of saying we're hoping things are going to improve in the future. They weren't going to do draconian cuts. They ran on a election campaign saying no draconian cuts. But in fact, they're spending everywhere. There's not one department that I'm aware of that's actually going to see its budget cut. So they campaigned on that and won an election on the fact they weren't going to do big cuts. Also, the provincial sales tax, PST it's also called a
HST, harmonized
political suicide tax. Because nobody could bring that in, and they keep getting pushed into that corner by the Wild Rose, saying you're going to bring in a PST, aren't you? And they keep saying no, we're not. So right now they're borrowing money, and that's another way of saying they're hoping the price of oil recovers. And you speak of David Dodge in his report. He's saying, yes, definitely borrow money now. Interest rates are low. He has a caveat in there as well, though. He is saying if the price doesn't recover in 5 years, we're in serious trouble. If we borrow at this rate, that's fine, as long as things recover. And Alberta's in a unique position because in Canada, we rely so much on the price of oil. Other provinces don't. They know basically what's going to happen in the future in terms of taxation, whereas in Alberta, we rely so much on this volatile oil price. If things recover in 3 or 4 years, we're good. If they don't, if it languishes for more than that, then we're in real trouble. And even David Dodge says that.
And it's very difficult to know. I mean, Bloomberg had a big analysis last week from some guy who's predicting that oil will be at $130 a barrel by 2017. Yeah. So, who knows? Oil could be at 30, it could be at 130.